You're fantastic. Thank you very much for being so generous with your time. On this website, you'll find all the information, all the forms, all the background that you need. However, bearing in mind how busy you are, we just this afternoon just want to offer you a few points that you might find useful from the point of view of the university, but also from the point of view of the students. So I'm going to ask two people who are now in their first year of teaching to talk about what they found the most helpful feedback or support from associate teachers during their last year of ed.
Hi, I'm Roy McGrath. I'm a first year English and history teacher at Wainui High School. I recently finished the graduate diploma in secondary teaching program at Victoria University, and I'm just talking to you this afternoon about some useful tips for associate teachers to help student teachers get the most out of their experience at your school. I found the most helpful things that I got from associate teachers were the work they put into building up my confidence in front of the students and my confidence in planning lessons, and that my ideas were actually good, or at least reasonable. So I think for associate teachers, my advice for you, my biggest piece of advice would be to continually work on building the student teacher's confidence in front of the class. So ways you can do that is just a friendly pat on the back after their lesson. Even if it doesn't go that well, just keep smiling. Don't panic, because they'll be panicking. Yeah, so building student teacher confidence, I'd definitely say, would be the most important thing for associate teachers to do. Yeah. I think another important way, or another really useful practical way that associate teachers can help build student teacher confidence is by trying to draw them into the classroom atmosphere as much as possible from the outset. I remember personally feeling like a real intruder walking into these people's class and just sitting at the back and watching them and writing all these notes. And I found it really useful when my associate teacher actually, right at the beginning of the lesson from the outset, introduced me to the class and sort of made a bit of a joke about me. It basically took the mick out of me for the first week, but it was really good because it invited you into the classroom culture, and you show that you can have a laugh with the kids, and it's great. And you got to remember that student teachers were most likely absolutely desperate for your sort of praise. They're really looking up to you in this situation. So the slightest nice thing that you say to them will just mean a huge amount to student teachers. Student teachers, they're there for 7 weeks, and inevitably they're going to have a bad lesson. I think it's important to remind student teachers that even if you have a bad lesson, no one's education is going to be ruined, and you can start again completely tomorrow. That's basically all the tips that I have. I mean, every student teacher is different, but I know those sort of things work for me. And I'd just like to say thanks to all the associate teachers for taking on student teachers. And if you think of it as like a burden, which some of you may, just think of it as having a little helper who can do things for you, like wipe stuff off the whiteboard and carry books around. So you're helping them, but you make sure they help you too.
I'm Rebecca Gordon. I'm a first-year math teacher at Queen Margaret College this year, and last year I completed the secondary diploma of teaching, the diploma of secondary teaching in mathematics and English. Roy covered some really good points about how an associate teacher can interact with the student teacher, but I also think there's a couple ways that associate teachers can interact with each other that would be really, really helpful for student teachers. The first one that comes to mind is some of my friends on TE had 4 associate teachers, and that can be really difficult. You might end up with one class that's very hard, and that associate only sees you for that one class. So I think it would be really useful if the associates talked to each other, particularly associates who have the same student teacher. to make sure that if 3 associates think the student teacher is doing wonderfully and 1 doesn't, it might really be helpful for them to discuss with each other what they think has been going on. So again, to the associate teachers, thank you so much for taking this on. It's such a huge commitment, we understand, but it means so much to us now first-year teachers that we actually know what we're doing in a classroom, and it's because of you. So make sure if you take on the responsibility, you don't take it on lightly, but make sure that you have a good time and you really, you're there for the student teacher. You're there to help us out. As much as this is a wonderful learning experience for us, it's also, a grade that we're getting from Teachers College. So that's a really important thing to know. What marks mean and what it actually means to say further development required, particularly on a final sheet that says you need further development, you might fail this TE. So that's a really important point. I remember I didn't want to say no to anything. I really wanted to seem enthusiastic and keen to do absolutely everything I could to help out my teachers and help out the school. Doing so, it would be great if the associate teacher would just make sure that we don't feel overburdened with workload. Particularly if we have to be marking a lot of exams or doing admin work that isn't necessarily part of the student teacher's duties. So just make sure that we're not going crazy because we're a bit overloaded. I just really want to reiterate Roy's point that it's really important for student teachers to know that if we have a bad lesson, everybody has a bad lesson, and of course you're going to have a bad lesson. I still have bad lessons, and I go home thinking, why on earth did I decide to do this? But then the next day I walk back into school, and the girls are there again going, yay, we get to go to maths! And so it'll always still bolster you up, so just make sure that you don't think that you're crap.
Well, I'd just like to add a couple of things that have come to the surface from research that we have carried out with the student teachers. And one of those is that could you be, as associate teachers, explicit about what you're doing and why you're doing it? As very experienced teachers, you often do things instinctively and it mightn't be apparent to the student watching you why you're doing what you're doing. So if you could be explicit, what the thinking is behind it and how that might impact on the student's learning. As student teachers become more confident in the class, which has come through from both Roy and Rebecca, that confidence needs to be built up, they can gradually start thinking about the student learning. At the start, the focus is very often on what I am doing as a teacher and how I'm managing the class and how I'm planning and what I'm doing. So if you gradually encourage them to think about, well, what difference is that making to the student learning? But that's a gradual thing. And from an administrative point of view, I just want to elaborate a bit on what Rebecca said about, she called it marking or the grading. And that's when you are asked to indicate whether a student teacher is a strong, competent, further development required or urgent attention required. And often there's confusion about this because of course all of us could say further development required about everyone. However, I really encourage you to look at the marking criteria, and that explains what we mean by competent at this stage of a student's learning to be a teacher. Very different from saying they're totally competent at every aspect. So please, ultimately, their continuing on the program can hinge on what they are graded as. Please be explicit all the way through with your feedback for the students. I'm talking about the weekly feedback and then the summative feedback at the end of the teaching experience. It's crucial that there's a transparent paper trail of the guidance and support program if there is any issue about whether a student passes or not. You mightn't be aware, but there is a panel discussion, looks at every report that is a borderline report. And those comments and those grades are what are used to make the decision. So it's important that you support a grade, the comments support the grade, and that you explain why you came to that decision. So once again, thanks very much. And finally, if there are any issues, any concerns, please get in touch. We really value our relationship with you. Thank you.